How's it going, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Thinking Blue podcast. I'm your host, Blake Harris. Now, last week, I did a podcast talking about the Mookie Betts trade that went down, and if you guys have been following the baseball world over the past week, you know that it was the most dramatic week of the baseball offseason that we've had in a while. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. But, I mean, again, if you were following along, you pretty much have an idea as to what happened this past week. It was totally something that was kind of like out of a movie. It was so dramatic. But I made a podcast last week talking about, the Mookie Betts trade, what it means for the Dodgers, my initial reaction on the trade that happened. Well, I mean, it's essentially a week later. I believe I recorded that last Tuesday when the trade went down. Today's Monday. It's Monday, February 10th. Also, by the way, I'm actually back home in Los Angeles right now, so I don't have my mic, so I'm recording this on my MacBook, so if the audio sounds a little bit different, that's why. We'll be back in Arizona next week, so I can go back to recording podcasts on my microphone. But anyway, so it's a week later. The Mookie Betts trade, as of right now when I'm recording this, it's 2 o'clock Pacific time, and the Dodgers haven't officially announced it yet, so who knows if we're going to have a part 2 to the situation. Now, I know, why it hasn't been made official yet, but I'm still kind of nervous. I still get a little anxious as to, the Dodgers not making it official quite yet, but I'm fairly confident that this deal will be done in the next day or two. But yeah, so I guess let's get into this. Let's talk about the Mookie Betts trade, the fact that he's now a Dodger. Last week, I gave my opinion on the trade. I gave my thoughts on Mookie Betts being a Dodger. I gave my thoughts on David Price being a Dodger. I'll go over those quickly as well, but I kind of want to talk about what happened over the course of the last week, because this is unlike something that we've seen, at least in recent memory, that I can recall that's happened with the trade. Now, normally whenever, a trade or anything happens, you have all these beat reporters that tweet out, the trade just happened, pending medical reviews, and normally for the most part it takes an hour or two or maybe a day at the most. Those medical reviews go in, the trade is finalized, and that's that. But for whatever reason, the Boston Red Sox, they, didn't like the medical reports of Brusdar Graterol, the Minnesota Twins prospect that they were going to be receiving. Now, there was a bunch of reports that came out in regards to his health and whatnot. My personal belief is the fact that the Red Sox heard the backlash and the outcry from the fans and, other people in relation to baseball saying how the Red Sox got absolutely shafted on the trade, because they did. That initial Red Sox trade, that got absolutely fleeced by the Dodgers. It was initially all they got was Alex Verdugo and Brusdar Graterol. So when you're getting that to give up Mookie Betts, David Price, and you're paying half of David Price's salary, that was an awful trade. So again, maybe the Red Sox found something in Graterol's medical records that they didn't like, or, maybe they actually didn't know that he was projected to be a relief pitcher. I mean, they thought, I guess they were getting a starting pitcher. It turns out he's going to be a relief pitcher. Now, it took me about 30 seconds to Google, Brusdar Graterol and find multiple articles from a few weeks ago saying that the Twins project him to be a reliever long term. So I'm not sure if the Red Sox just didn't do their homework, didn't do enough research, but I was able to find out that he's projected to be a reliever, so I find it kind of hard to believe that they didn't either. But nonetheless, the trade, it didn't go through. It lasted, almost an entire week, and then I believe it was on Saturday when the Twins announced that they're pulling out of the 3-team trade. Now, however, they did say that they're interested in still working out a trade with the Dodgers, but they didn't want anything to do with that 3-team deal because the Red Sox were asking for another top 10 prospect from the Twins, and the Twins, no way, should be forced to give another top 10 prospect because the Red Sox didn't do their research. Now, I love Kenta Maeda. I think he's great. I think he's an above-average starting pitcher. He's also a great reliever, but Kenta Maeda is not worth 2 top 10 prospects, regardless of how bad a farm system is. He's simply not. And the fact that, Graterol, who I think was the number 3 overall prospect, or like the number 4 overall prospect, the fact that he was involved in a trade in regards to Maeda, I mean, I think that was a bit of an overpay for the Twins, but, they needed Maeda for this upcoming season, so I understand what I meant there. But, so the trade looked like, it still had a bunch of issues, a bunch of reporters were saying it was still going to get done, and ultimately, yesterday, the deal got done. It was a separate trade. It was kind of similar, but kind of different to what it was initially a week ago. So, the 3-team deal, initially between the Dodgers, Red Sox, and Twins, that's off. It was no longer a 3-team deal. Instead, the Dodgers did 2, separate trades. They did one trade with the Red Sox. They did one trade with the Twins. Now, arguably, the biggest trade was with the Red Sox. The Dodgers get Mookie Betts, they get David Price, and they get the Red Sox to pay half of David Price's contract. Now, on the other end, the Red Sox, they actually get, in my opinion, the much better deal out of this, which is unfortunate for Dodgers fans because they have to part ways with some of their young prospects. Alex Verdugo, he still goes to Boston in the trade. I think that's a great piece. Boston, they're going to love Alex Verdugo. He's truly a guy that can almost do it all. He has the bat, he has the glove, he hits for average. I mean, I guess the speed isn't, like a 20 or 30 stolen base kind of guy, so he's not quite the five-tool player, but Alex Verdugo is still a great piece for Boston to get back. They also get back Jeter Downs, a young infield prospect in the Dodgers organization, who I believe is the number 5 or number 6 prospect in the Dodgers farm system, depending on what system you like to look at. So he goes to Boston, and the Dodgers also part ways with Connor Wong, who's a catcher. That one I'm really indifferent about because the Dodgers have so many catching prospects in their system. I don't think Connor Wong ever would have really made an impact with the Dodgers, so I have no problem parting with him, but it does kind of suck to have Jeter Downs go in the deal because, I was really high on Jeter Downs. He really shot up the farm system this past year, but as I tweeted this out yesterday, the Dodgers just have so much depth at the infield position. They got Corey Seager, Max Muncy, Gavin Lux. Those guys are going to be there for the next few seasons. They got Michael Busch. They got Cody Hosey coming up the farm. Then they also have Chris Taylor, Kike Hernandez that can play the infield as well. So although Jeter Downs, a really good prospect, I don't really see how there's going to be room for him, in the foreseeable future. So I did think that made him a little more expendable, and it made it a little bit easier to part with him going to Boston. Now, in the trade with the Twins, this is when things get interesting. The Dodgers, they still send Kenta Maeda to the Twins. They're also sending cash. I think they're paying like $10 million of Kenta's salary for the next few seasons. So the Twins, they get some salary relief in regards to Kenta. Now, the Dodgers out of this, they get a fantastic haul. Instead of going to the Red Sox, Brusdar Graterol comes to the Dodgers. Now, I absolutely love this move. Brusdar Graterol, again, he's a top 100 prospect. I think he was number 3 in the Twins organization. He comes to the Dodgers now, and I really, really expect him, I guess, to be a relief pitcher. I know there's still some talks about him being a starting pitcher, but overall, I think he's going to be a relief pitcher. And what a reliever the Dodgers are potentially getting. I'll get to that in a second. The Dodgers also get outfielder prospect Luke Raleigh. I think it's Raleigh. I'm not entirely sure, but he was a former Dodger prospect. He was sent to the Twins in that Brian Dozier trade a few years back, so they get him back. And the Dodgers also get the 67th overall pick in the 2020 draft. So I guess you can say with the money they sent the Twins in the Maeda thing, I guess they're kind of buying a draft pick in a sense, but still, the 67th draft pick, that's going to be a good pick, and we've seen how well the Dodgers have drafted in recent years, so if this is anything like we've seen in years past, the Dodgers are probably going to make a really good selection here, so this can be a deal where even 10, 15 years down the line, we're still talking about the impact if this pick they make turns out to be a really good player, but again, the player I want to talk about is Brusdar Graterol, who is a 21-year-old pitcher. He only, I think, had 10 appearances last year with the Twins, if I'm not mistaken. 9 2/3 innings, had about 10 strikeouts, I think. Very raw. He's a very raw pitcher. Not a whole lot really on him. He was really good in the minors. It was kind of shaky in the majors, had an ERA of like 4.5, but again, only had 10 appearances, so not enough really to make a case for him, being good or bad or whatever, but this is a guy where I think if the Dodgers work with him, I'm not exactly sure if he's going to start the season in the minors, if he's going to start the season on the big league roster, I'm not entirely sure. This is a guy where if the Dodgers can figure him out, if they can be patient with him, if they can work with him, not only can he be, like a potential closer in a few seasons when kind of Kenley falls off and moves on, he can be a guy that impacts the Dodgers bullpen this season and this October because he has arguably some of the filthiest stuff that I've seen from a pitcher in baseball over the last few seasons. It's one thing for a pitcher to have a 100-mile-an-hour pitch. It's another when it has movement. Now, if you guys go over to my Twitter, which, by the way, @BlakeHarrisTBLA, make sure to give me a follow there if you're a Dodgers fan. I posted some videos of some of his pitches he made this past season, and his movement it's unreal. I mean, it's tough to explain. You got to go watch it. This guy, again, if the Dodgers can work with him, have him, fix his command, fix his control, this can be a guy where he could be an all-star closer down the line. He could be an all-star reliever down the line, depending on how they want to use him. I really don't think he's going to be a starter, moving forward, maybe the Dodgers want to use him as that, but I think being a reliever is his best bet. This guy has nasty stuff, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do in the future. Again, I'm not expecting him to be, on the opening day roster. I'm not expecting him to make an impact in the first few months of the season, but I think come the middle of the season and, maybe towards October, if he's up and he's making an impact, this can be a guy that can help the Dodgers win a World Series, especially if you got guys like Kenley Jansen, Blake Trinan, Joe Kelly, Pedro Baez. If they're on the top of their game and you add Gratterall to the mix, I mean, what an absolute steal of a move, especially considering that he was supposed to go to the Red Sox in the first place, and now the Dodgers get him. I guess you can say the Dodgers kind of traded Jeter Downs to get him, but I think this is a smart move because, as I mentioned, Jeter Downs, though he's a great prospect, I don't really see where he's going to be helping the Dodgers in the next few seasons just because I don't know how much playing time he's going to have. Whereas Gratterall, he comes in, he can make an impact this season, he could be making an impact for years to come, and he's only 21 years old. So you can have him for the next 4 or 5 seasons. He can be developing, and he can reach his prime in 5 years, and he can still be a Dodger. And I'm just overall, I should be excited that they got Mookie Betts, which I am. I'm very excited they got Mookie Betts, but Gratterall, this is a guy that just has me super excited. I think the Dodgers can work with him. I think they can, not fix him because, obviously he's still kind of young to have problems, but if they can work a few things out, I think this can be a guy that can ultimately help the Dodgers down the line, and especially this upcoming October, because as we've seen in years past, it seems like the Dodgers bullpen, though they've gone out and they've made some decent moves, it seems like the bullpen has always been kind of the weak point in October, but they made the addition of Trinan, they made the addition of Jimmy Nelson this offseason, and getting a guy like Gratterall, who again is only 21 years old, who's only going to keep getting better and improving, this can be a sneaky good move for the Dodgers. So overall, they get Mookie Betts, they get David Price, they get Gratterall, they get some prospects in the trade and a draft pick as well, which is great. And overall, the Dodgers just improved in every aspect. Obviously Mookie Betts, in my opinion, the second best player in baseball. He makes that starting lineup even better. I think it's the best starting lineup in all of baseball. David Price, now again, he's no Hyun-Jin Ryu, but losing Rich Hill this offseason really hurt. I really like Julio Urias this upcoming season, especially considering he's likely going to be in the starting rotation, but Julio Urias, he's been shaky the last few seasons. He's either been, hurt, he hasn't been healthy, he had that whole, off the field issue this past season. He hasn't really had a whole bunch of experience as a starting pitcher ever since he came up. So adding a starting pitcher like David Price to the rotation is huge in my opinion. I know his ERA was high last year. I think it was the highest of his career. He battled some injuries. He was really good in the first half. And the Dodgers, the fact that they're only going to be paying him $16 million, they're not going to be asking him to be the David Price of old. They're not going to be asking him to be a Cy Young candidate. They're not asking him to be an all-star. If he can go out there, give the Dodgers about 25 starts, keep that ERA right around 4, maybe below it, I think they're going to take that because he's going to be their number 3 or number 4 starter. As I mentioned, he's a lefty, something they desperately need for that starting rotation. And not to mention, he has postseason experience. We saw what he did to the Dodgers just 2 seasons ago, when he pitched Game 5 at Dodger Stadium and it was essentially lights out. So he's got that postseason experience. As I mentioned, he's going to be a veteran in the locker room, which is going to be great for the young guys. And as I mentioned, he's been very good the last few seasons. I get that his ERA was above 4 last year, but you look at what he did in 2016, 2017, 2018, he was a really good pitcher. I just think he got a really bad rap because he was getting paid, like $35 million, and he wasn't living up to those expectations. But if you look at those numbers from a $16 million a year pitcher standpoint, you'll take that in a heartbeat, especially being your number 3 or number 4 option, as I mentioned. So the Dodgers, they upgrade their starting pitching, and I think this is huge for October because we know that Walker Buehler is going to be the number 1. We know Clayton Kershaw is going to be the number 2. But come October, are you going to be ready to trust, Julio Urias, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Alex Wood? Now, I get Alex Wood had a great start against the Astros a few years ago in the World Series, but would you trust Alex Wood as your Game 3 starter? I don't know, and that's why I think adding David Price is such a good move because now he solidifies that October bullpen, and, as we've seen, he had a rocky, trust me, he had a rocky start to his postseason career. I was reading some stat the other day where I think he was like 0-7, 0-8 to start, but ever since then, he's kind of bounced back, and as I mentioned, he's got that postseason and World Series experience, something that'll help the Dodgers in the long run. So David Price, it can't be overlooked, being a great pickup for the Dodgers. And as I mentioned, the fact that Boston is paying half of his salary. So again, maybe David Price isn't worth $16 million, but I really think it's a good move. I think he's worth the $16 million. The Dodgers desperately needed a decent number 3 starter, and I think they get a good one in him. So yeah, I mentioned the lineup gets better, the starting rotation better, and as I talked about Gratterall, their bullpen gets better because I think he'll be a great addition to the bullpen come October. Again, we're going to have to wait and see. I'm sure there's going to be some hiccups that he has to go through. He's going to have to go through a lot of work with the Dodgers pitching staff, but I think Gratterall is going to be a great addition to the bullpen moving forward in 2020 and for, future seasons as well. Now, this is something I want to talk about before I go to Twitter and read your guys' thoughts on the whole situation. After the 3-team trade happened, they announced that there was going to be a separate trade with the Angels where Joc Pederson and Ross Stripling, they'd be going to Anaheim, and the Dodgers would be getting back Luis Rengifo and I think some other prospects as well. They never released who the other prospects were, but it essentially seemed kind of like a salary dump where the Dodgers wanted to get into the luxury tax and parting ways with Joc Pederson and Ross Stripling. Those were the moves they had to make. Now, I know a bunch of Dodgers fans were, kind of going, why do that? Why not just pay the tax threshold, whatever it is? Because Joc Pederson and Ross Stripling, they're both former All-Stars. They're both really good players, and you're essentially giving them away for, I guess, minor league depth. I mean, I don't know if Rengifo would have been, like a bench player with the Dodgers or not, but overall, I thought it was an awful trade. Well, yesterday after this deal went down, I guess the Angels came out and they said, we're backing out of this deal. Now, it turns out today they came out and they pretty much said we were upset with how the Dodgers and Red Sox delayed this whole thing. We didn't like how they handled that, and we want nothing to do with it. Now, I don't really know what the Angels are doing because essentially you were getting Joc Pederson, a great addition to your starting lineup. You were getting Ross Stripling, who at this point probably would have been like their second or third best starter. You're improving your team by essentially giving away nothing, and you pull out of the trade. So not exactly sure why the Angels did that, but as of right now when I'm recording this, Joc Pederson and Ross Stripling are still Dodgers. However, things are going to get kind of complicated with them moving forward because I mentioned this right when I started this podcast. As of right now, the trade hasn't been made official yet. Now, it's also because I think the league has to work out the money going from the Red Sox to the Dodgers, I guess, to make sure everything works. But also, as it stands right now, the Dodgers have 42 players on their 40-man roster. So until the Dodgers get their roster down to 40, the trade, I guess, can't be made official. So there's some players on the Dodgers that, can be designated for assignment, like Tyler White, Josh Sborz. I think those guys can easily be DFA'd. But I'm not exactly sure if the Dodgers are going to want to do that because, as I mentioned, they still want to get under the luxury tax. So I'm not going to be surprised if Joc Pederson and Ross Stripling are traded. Now, they could be traded in the same deal. They could be traded in separate deals. I'm sure Joc Pederson has to be a hot commodity. I mean, here's a guy that hit, 36 home runs last season, had an OPS of above 850, is only owed $7.5 million this upcoming season, will be a free agent in a year. I think there's a lot of teams that could use him for their outfield, could use him for a DH position, whatever it may be. I mean, it's not too often you can get a guy that hits 35 home runs and only costs $7 million. So overall, I hope the Dodgers don't part with them because I think having that platoon in left field of A.J. Pollock and Joc Pederson will be nice. And then especially considering, let's just say something happens to Mookie, let's say something happens to Bellinger, let's just say that there's injuries here and there. It's great to have depth. That's been the Dodgers, strong suit over the last few seasons. So I don't like parting with Joc or Stripling because, again, with Stripling, he's not going to be a starter. But as we've seen in years past, when injuries happen, Stripling fills in nicely to the starting rotation. He's a great piece in the bullpen. So if the Dodgers are able to hold on to Joc and Ross Stripling, I'm going to be thrilled because I think those are two guys that they're just such key pieces for the Dodgers moving forward. They're fan favorites. Everyone loves them. And again, you want to have that depth, but I understand from the Dodgers' perspective, if they want to trade them, maybe get some, minor league pieces or some salary relief, that makes sense. But I mean, if I was in charge, if you're $10, $15 million over the tax because of them, pay the fee. I mean, these guys, these owners, they have billions of dollars. What's the difference if you have to pay a small fee to keep the depth? So we'll have to wait and see what happens. As of right now, again, the trade hasn't been made official because the Dodgers need to clear 2 roster spots. So we'll just have to wait and see. As I mentioned, I'd love for them not to be traded, but ultimately I think they might be. At least Joc. I think Joc has a higher chance of getting traded than Ross Stripling because Joc's value is just so much higher than Stripling's. But again, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. And yeah, so that's the latest in regards to that whole Angels trade rumors. But yeah, those are pretty much just my initial thoughts on the trade, everything that happened, what the Dodgers look like moving forward. So we're going to turn to Twitter right now. Now, normally when I do my podcast, I always do a Q&A where I tweet out saying, I'm recording right now, hit me with those questions. So pretty much what I did was I tweeted out saying, let me know your thoughts on kind of this whole dramatic series that happened this past week in regards to this whole Mookie Betts saga. I wanted to hear you guys' thoughts on it, and I wanted to hear you guys' thoughts on the prospects and the players the Dodgers got back in the updated deal. So pretty much what your thoughts are on getting Betts, Price, Gratterall, and I guess the other prospects, sending out Verdugo, sending out Downs, sending out Maeda. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. So we have enough time to go through about 5 to 10 of these. So let's see what we got here. And as I mentioned, guys, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Blake Harris, TBLA, an absolute must follow if you're a Dodgers fan. All right, let's start here with Taryn Miller. Boston did us a favor by forcing a different deal. Our pitching got awesome help with them doing such, and whatever we possibly had with Verdugo, we got tenfold back in total overall while keeping everyone else. And that's the biggest thing, too, as well, that kind of happened in the last trade. We talked about the fact that the Dodgers farm wasn't touched at all, so they did have to dive into their farm. They did have to trade, their number 5 prospect, but they're getting a top 100 prospect back, so although they had to part with their farm, they essentially kept the farm the same. They still have the same amount of top 100 prospects. So well done, Dodgers, in regards to that. Darren Anderson says, thoughts? In reality, isn't this world championship or bust for LA? Very few weaknesses now. They have to win, right? I mean, it seems like the last few seasons it's been World Series or bust. But I think this year more than ever, it has to be World Series or bust. You went out, you made the big splash, you got Mookie Betts, you gave up a few young pieces in Verdugo and Jeter Downs, and you're also, parting ways with Kenta Maeda and then potentially like Ross Stripling, Jock Peterson. So I think this is without a doubt World Series or bust. I mean, Mookie Betts is only signed for 1 more year. The Dodgers can obviously re-sign him, but if they don't, if they don't win the World Series and they lose Mookie Betts, it's an awful trade for the Dodgers, no questions asked. Regardless of how David Price turns out the next few seasons, regardless of how Alex Verdugo and Jeter Downs turn out, if the Dodgers don't win the World Series and lose Mookie Betts, it's a loss of a trade. So I think the Dodgers, they would 100% have to win the World Series this year. I think they're easily the favorites in the National League. I think it's going to be between them and the Yankees. I don't know who has the edge right now, but I do really believe it's World Championship or bust for LA. David Rosenthal, he says, big win for the Dodgers, all in on 2020, and now with the advantage to sign Mookie long-term, 21-year-old Gratterall ain't bad either, that's the crazy thing, too. If the Dodgers re-sign Mookie Betts long-term, that's still a win of a trade, and as I mentioned earlier in this episode, Gratterall, only 21 years old. The real Troy Beltran says, no drama, glad they finally finished it. Dodger Timmy, glad to get this deal done. Wonder what role Gratterall will have since we have Kelly, Jansen, Treinen as the late inning guys. Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see as well because the Dodgers, they do have a pretty backed up bullpen. I mean, you got Kenley, you got Treinen, you got Pedro Baez, you got Joe Kelly. If those guys are clicking, it seems like it's going to be tough to find a late inning role for Gratterall, but if he's able to perform, I feel like he's going to be able to work his way into that bullpen spot. Rational Take Guy says, underappreciated in this, that while Freeman had his warts, his methodical and disciplined mindset really helped here. Tony Clark, Boston's flip-flop, and the art drama could have thrown off some folks, but Freeman kept his head up high and still got a great deal done. On the wackier side, though, Art backing out of this deal seems so odd. Do you think it's possible he did it because he thought he would also cause the Betts deal to collapse? Now, again, I'm not exactly sure what was going on from Boston's side of things. However, I just really think that they heard the backlash and they wanted out of this trade. Now, I don't think they wanted to keep Mookie Betts. I still think they wanted to trade him, but I do think he realized he didn't get that big of a haul and he kind of wanted to back out of it. Bob Jones says, I don't know much about Gratterall, especially what his value is. Is he going to be a bullpen piece for the Dodgers immediately? Still needs to develop. Is he just another trade piece for the next package? Twitter seems divided on if he's worth anything. Yeah, Twitter's still kind of confused with this whole thing just because there's still, it's only been 24 hours since they got Gratterall. I don't think the Dodgers have any plans on trading him. I mean, obviously they did the deal with the Twins to get him. They saw something in him that they liked, something that the Red Sox didn't see that they liked. But I think he's in their long-term plans. Robert Urquidy, I am definitely saying that wrong, Urquidy, so I apologize, Robert. He says, this will be the deepest lineup LA has had in a while. I agree. I mean, I'm 23 years old, and this is by far, I think, the deepest lineup I've ever seen the Dodgers had. So, I mean, I'm sure there might have been a lineup in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s that was maybe really deep, but at least in my lifetime, this is the deepest lineup I've ever seen them have. I really like this one. This comes from DXTR. Bittersweet seeing Verdugo gone, but it was a great trade. Not mad at it. Boston is a bunch of pansies. Well, DXTR, I agree. Boston, a bunch of pansies. Our final one comes from Andre Mouchard. Again, I am the absolute worst with last names, so I apologize, Andre. Mookie will go to the Hall of Fame in a Dodgers hat. Gratterall will close out the next Dodgers-Red Sox interleague title. Red Sox brass will watch Price start 2 playoff games in 2020, and other teams are now eager to trade with the clearly inept Red Sox. Wouldn't that be something if Mookie Betts ends up going to the Hall of Fame as a Dodger? I mean, I'm down. That means the trade worked out in our favor, and we're keeping him long term. And wouldn't that be something if it's Gratterall like on the mound in the 9th Dodgers Red Sox? How awesome would that be if the Dodgers win a World Series with Gratterall closing things out? I think that'd be fantastic. That would be incredible. One can dream, right? That'd be the ideal situation. But that wraps it up for these ones. I appreciate everyone hitting me up on Twitter. Couldn't go through them all, or else we'd be doing this for a lot longer. But I appreciate you guys. As I mentioned, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Blake Harris, TBLA. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Thinking Blue with Blake Harris. I post a lot of great Dodgers content here. I post my podcast a few times a week whenever I'm able to record. I have a bunch of awesome and fun Dodgers videos coming in the near future. I mean, I got a lot going on with school and work, so hopefully within the few weeks or months I can get those videos going, because as I mentioned, if you're a Dodgers fan, you definitely want to subscribe. Leave a comment below on this video on just pretty much explaining what your thoughts are on the trade, what your thoughts are on acquiring Mookie Betts, on the new trade that happened, and all the drama that happened last week. Let me know your guys' thoughts. I'd love to interact with you guys and pretty much talk about this trade, because again, this is a blockbuster trade. It's not every day you can acquire one of the best players in all of baseball. A lot of moving parts, so I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts and interact with you guys in the comments. You can also listen to the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you're not able to listen on YouTube, you can listen on those 2 platforms. The links to those are in the description below. But yeah, guys, that pretty much wraps it up for me. Again, I apologize that I'm recording on my Mac. Normally the audio sounds a whole lot better on my mic, but again, I'm back home in LA right now. I'll be back in Arizona in a week, so the quality will sound a lot better there. So yeah, again, make sure to follow me on Twitter. That link is in the description below as well. Make sure to subscribe, turn those notifications on so you never miss a video. And yeah, guys, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much for watching and listening. This has been Blake Harris, and I will see you guys very soon.